In previous videos, when I had multiple elements that had exactly the same attributes, like multiple text boxes, you probably were thinking it'd be nice if there were a way of setting a global style the way there is in CSS, where you have an internal style sheet at the top of the page, and then you have a selector that specifies the type of tag, and rules that specify the way you want that tag to look. And that's applied to every tag once you specify that in the CSS and the style section at the top, usually in the header. And it turns out there is. Basically, it uses the style, the target type, and the setter. And you have to put these within the Windows.resources, which sort of is like a combination of the header and the style tags and the internal style sheet, but not really. Actually, resources, the window.resources is used for a lot of other things that you want to make global besides styles, but I'll get into that in other videos. And the style is a complex element inside the windows.resources section that creates globally applied styles like the internal style sheet in CSS. And the target type attribute of the style specifies what object elements should be affected by the style, like the selector in CSS. And setter is a nested object element inside the style, which defines one rule, a property value pair, just like the rules separated by semicolons in CSS and between the curly braces. And the property half of the property value pair is defined by a property attribute, which is property equals. And the value half of the property value pair is defined by the value attribute in the setter. So that it's pretty much totally analogous to CSS, and it's also analogous in that, like CSS, local attributes and property elements can override the global settings, which is the meaning of the cascading and cascading style sheets. You have levels of styles, and the more direct styles override. Well, I think this will become a lot more clear when we look at an actual example. Here's the window.resources section, which is above the grid. And then within that we have a style target type equals text block, which is like the selector. And then we have a number of rules which are like the rules separated by semicolons between curly braces. We have a setter property equals horizontal alignment, value equals center, setter property equals font family, value equals Comic Sans MS, which actually is one of my favorite fonts, although it's a little odd. Setter property equals font size, value equals 34, and setter property equals foreground, value equals red. And then inside a stack panel, which is inside the grid, we have several text blocks, and we have no attributes or property elements whatsoever specified in these text blocks. But because of this global style that has a target type of text block, these are all going to be affected by this style, and it's going to look like this. But as I mentioned, if you override the property, like if you put an attribute in this first one that says font size equals 14, and we look here at the top, suddenly you have a little tiny I there, because this local attribute is overriding the global style. And we can do the same thing with property elements. If I delete this and put a couple spaces between the tag, and then put in a property element of text block dot font size, and then between the opening and closing tag I put a 14. Has the same effect, creates a little tiny hi there. So we could compile and run this. Seems a little academic at this point. Maybe I'll get rid of the property element. That's kind of a pain getting rid of it. And compile and run this. And you see the global elements are applied to the window. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.